Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.
So my background was actually statistician. So I was trained as a statistician. I was working as actuary for many years for insurance companies. About 8 years ago, I started the first AI company called Hyperana. I was the CTO co-founder. The company is basically AI for business intelligence. And current company is called Curious Thing. It's my second AI startup. Now I'm the CEO co-founder and I'm running the business side. So I have to say I've seen both tech side and the business side of running the AI company. Though now what we are doing is totally different. We do, customer communication. So we automate phone calls. I would say the biggest learning I've had in the past few years is basically really just try to work with people's, I would say, mindset change. Or the paradigm shift, so that you can acknowledge what's needed in the market. One thing I want to say is today what's needed and what's kind of seen as acceptable in the market is totally different to 5 years ago or 8 years ago.
What would you say are those key differences?
So I think maybe I'll take a step back, right? I think for individual customers, when Siri was released, lots of people were like, oh, this is cool. But really, if I invite everyone to think about it, it's cool in a way that people think it's a toy. Not many people use that as oh, it's very productive. It's a good introduction of this kind of experience, but back then it's a toy. Now I can't say it's still a toy, but to lots of people it's still a toy, right? I use it for very simple tasks like, hey, a stopwatch, or hey, I've got something in the oven, do a 20 minutes timer. Actually, it's a journey for people to truly realize what it should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing. But one thing I realized is in the past few years, the top thing is people no longer see this as a toy, especially in the B2B field. And people no longer see this as, oh, let's run an experiment. I think most of the businesses we work with or we speak with, they have a clear view regarding where they want the AI to play a role and what kind of value, especially quantitative value, they want to see out of this, which never happened before. That's the biggest shift, I would say, in the past few years. Absolutely. I can only speak for the fields I play. Currently Curious Thing does a phone call automation. So we don't do cold calling, by the way. We only do, business to consumer communication where the business already know the consumer. And we do information delivery. We do reminder. We do appointment management. Just imagine you call a business after hours, the AI will answer the call. And it can help with some of the simple tasks like, hey, let's reschedule the appointment. Oh, you're going to cancel. Okay, I'll do that for you. Or you receive a phone call saying, hey, you've got an appointment here tomorrow. You need to prepare this information. Let me ask you some simple questions to make sure that you are ready for tomorrow. We do a lot of that. We mainly focus on financial services and healthcare these days. I think the biggest change in terms of for the business world, where we are compared to for this field where it was, say 5 years ago, the main difference is the technology is more mature. So what it can cover, to be very frank, it can't cover everything, right? For complex conversation, important conversation requires, I would say, massive empathy. I don't use AI to do that. But now AI can do more, more complex transactions. Hey, there's a payment you have missed. Let me check what is the next step, etc., etc. All of these can be done, right? So I think that's the technology part, but also why people are more ready than before is also because, the AI technology itself is actually able to prove the value. Say in the past, it's oh, let's run the experiment, let's do a chatbot. And the chatbot is usually saying, hey, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you please say that again? I'm pretty sure everyone has experienced a version of that. Now the chance of that happening is like lower and lower. Yeah. And also I think it's because like business builders or AI business builders like me, we are getting more pragmatic. And we don't go in and try to sell the AI concept anymore. We go in and try to say, hey, look, it's AI, it's a tool, just like people were trying to sell you software. Let's solve some problems where you can actually make more money or save more money. So I still feel we have built a really, really cool product. It's super, super cool. But one important thing I learned is like being cool doesn't mean much. Yeah. And, you know, I still remember when we were talking that I was interviewing and asking, hey, do you know how to code in Python? And people say, yeah, I do. Then I will ask some detailed question, not just about Python, but also about certain framework. So one thing I learned through that journey, not saying AI doing job interview is the wrong business, but it's not the business we could actually make it work. Because back then, I think the biggest challenge we had was like lots of our clients or people we talk to, they find it so cool, but it's quite difficult to justify the value easily within the business. While 1 year after that, we realized for certain businesses, we can just quickly address more important problems. Like some people, they really want to reach, they couldn't. Yeah. Some people, they really have to reach today, not next week, they couldn't. Yeah. No matter how many people you hire in call center or BPO, or sometimes people call you after hours, you really can help them, but you couldn't. So second day morning, many people are calling at 9 a.m., all of that. Yeah. So that's kind of like the shift of a mindset from my side. But technology-wise, I would say compared to 3 years ago, large language model as a thing is now like, now everyone knows what's large language model. Back then we were like, oh, we use BERT, it's a large language model, you know, pre-trained model, many people would ask us, what is that? Yeah. So I'm not saying because we use other people's large language model, but we actually started quite early. Yeah. So now I think, you know, it's more mature and, you know, more people understand that this new pattern of building software is actually in the future. In general, I'm very positive about what human beings like us are capable of. Yeah. So to me, firstly, you know, I actually went through my own learning when I saw ChatGPT. I was like, oh, it's just a good interface for content creation, right? I used it. It was like, cool, you can, you know, correct my emails, grammar, spelling errors, which is very helpful because English is my second language. But then after 1 month, I started reading how other people are using this, like from API level. Then I realized how big it is. Yeah. So I know there were people talking about this as, oh, it's a new iPhone moment. I feel it's the new internet. That's my kind of like a personal opinion. I think it's a new internet. I think the key thing we all need to think about is like now it's almost impossible for any of us to imagine the work life without internet, right? And also now it's quite difficult for you or for me to say, hey, what did the internet mean to the workforce back then? Because you know, people didn't know, right? You know, it evolves, but at the same time, it's creating the new infrastructure. I think that's how big it is. But at the same time, think about how many jobs were created, and think about how many jobs were recreated and redefined. Yeah. So to me, I think there's no clear answer in terms of like, oh, you know, it will disrupt this particular type of job. This will actually make this type of job more important. I don't really think I know the answer. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a big shift for all of us to redefine what we do. Mm-hmm. For example, content creation, maybe I believe content creation will be even more important, not less. Yeah. Though Mid-Journey looks scary, right? Like when it can create like the really, really cool arts. But I think the focus might be different than, you know, compared to before. So that's how I see it. So it's more like everyone will have to work in a different way. It's interesting. But people wouldn't say, hey, can you please write a resume for me? It's usually like, can you please correct my resume based on the information I've provided? So I think, I don't know, like next year, after this whole generative AI large language model thing, I think, will become more clear regarding the impact it will give us. I think today what we see, or ChatGPT itself, is just a start. I think the best way to learn certain things, like, basically you fuck up once or twice, then you really learn. When I was doing the first company, I started the business with my colleague, right? I was a CTO co-founder. Then for the second company, we started the whole company, my CTO co-founder, myself, and another co-founder. We three started the business together. So maybe I'll share a little bit regarding how I view the CTO co-founder and the role of the CTO co-founder. So now I have a really, really smart CTO co-founder. Like, his name is Han. He's PhD in machine learning, natural language processing. We got to know each other like, I think 1 or 2 years before I do this. And when we decided, okay, when Dave and I, my other co-founder, and I decided to do this, we realized, okay, we need someone who's deep in the natural language processing. Then we started looking into our network. And that's how I was like, hey, Han, do you want to consider leaving your job and do this with us? So we didn't go through a journey of let's kind of like go talk to everyone and hire a CTO co-founder, because it's through like, existing connection. Also, I was lucky because I knew quite many, head of engineering, engineers and data scientists. But back then, if you ask me, hey, say I wanted to be the CTO, to hire or find someone who's going to do the commercial side, that would be challenging for me. I think the question regarding whether someone needs a CTO co-founder, I think depends on the business you are building. If you want to build something in deep tech that is complex, it requires a lot of, time to do R&D, product research, and you might need a CTO co-founder. You need someone who's going to run that part of the business. But if you are a good kind of like a CEO or CTO who can do the job already, maybe that's not the case. However, if you don't understand the engineering side of the work or the product development side of the work, that will be challenging. But there are other types of business, right? Which is like, it's not like the technology complexity. There are existing patterns of building those type of platforms. Say I'm going to start an e-commerce. Maybe having a CTO co-founder will be great, don't take me wrong, but it's not as necessary or as important as the first example I was sharing. So it really depends on what you're doing. Just like, hiring, right? Depends on what kind of a business you are, what you need, the problem you are facing, you might make a different hiring decision. Finding a co-founder is just, the first step of hiring. That's how I see it. I think I'm still developing that. I can't say I'm there. Like, I'm still learning how to be a good CEO. I think compared to 4 years ago or 6 years ago, I'm definitely better. This is how I see it, right? Like, you will never be ready. That's the first thing I want to say, right? Most of the fun part of doing a startup or joining a startup is actually that, hey, you kind of feel you will be there. You kind of feel you'll be ready. But the reality is you will never be 100% ready. When you are ready, say I'm a really, really good head of engineering, bigger challenge will come to you and you might be promoted to CTO. I think that's how I see it. It's like, don't go find the role you feel, okay, I can do. Go find the role that will give you the challenge so you can learn. Like, I learned most of my engineering skills from my engineers when I was a CTO. I had some programming skill, but I wouldn't say I'm a very good engineer, right? Because I learned everything from doing things. I never went through proper engineering education. And at the same time, when I started working as a CEO co-founder, I have to learn lots of like go-to-market stuff, from my team or from my peers, from other founders. I think that's of course it's painful, but that's also the fun part of being a founder. So I personally don't believe in pre-learning, which is like, hey, I read all the books and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to do that. You're going to miss your timing if that's the way you work. Talked about, right? Don't do the job you have no clue about, right? That's wrong, right? I've got no idea how to program, but I will be the CTO. Then, you can't really even distinguish who is a good engineer, who is not. but like you have some core skills, but some other skills are missing, which is fine. Then first they analyze what you are good at, right? If you want to be good at a job or building a company, at least you need to really understand the why you part, which is like, okay, this company is going to be successful. I will be the CEO co-founder. The why me part is because I understand the industry. I experienced the problem myself. I know how to do go-to-market, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know how to hire. I don't know how to run an engineering team, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Identify that. Then use other ways to mitigate the part you were not good at. At the same time, for the part you were not good at, but it's the important part of your role, just learn that as fast as possible. Talk to other people who are known to be like the best in that particular problem space. Ask them. So that's kind of how I feel. But if you've never sold anything, you've never even talked to people about commercial model, then you can't be the head of sales, unfortunately, right? But if you kind of were there, but you feel you were missing one or two pieces, it's okay. You can start. That's how I see it. I totally agree. I think, I'll put it this way, in business, right, certain things make you feel it's complex, right? If you've never, done any coding, you feel building or programming is complex. Or you might feel sales is complex. At the same time, some people feel customer support is easy. They're like, I can imagine I've been supported. Some people might feel recruitment or hiring is easy. Because it's like, I pay you. How difficult would that be? I think that's the kind of where the bias is coming from. And I think for founders or business leaders, it's important to address those bias. Right? Appreciate the things you didn't know or you don't know. Because that's the first step of truly solve that problem. Like, hey, I thought customer support is easy, but maybe it's not, right? How do you handle, different scenarios? How do you build a process? And how do you make sure that when your number of customers grow by 10 times, you don't have to hire another 10 people? Like, all of this is, I think it's science and arts. It's just, but for some people, like including me a few years ago, I felt, doesn't feel difficult. It's definitely not difficult. I think that's a wrong mindset. Just check our website. If you search for Curious Thing on Google, you will find us. If you search for Voice AI, we are ranked #1 organically in Australia and New Zealand. You will also find us.
Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in Fintech Executive Search.